All right, welcome back to WMMA Now with your host Chuck Stevenson. Tonight I want to talk a little bit about, wrestling and to a lesser extent, like submission grappling, stuff like that. There is a lot of hate and a lot of complaining, throughout, the fandom and everywhere involving MMA for something that is such a crucial part of the sport. Now, this is not just limited to, women's MMA. This goes on through the men's divisions. This is goes all throughout the sport. There's just a lot of complaining about, wrestling and grappling. And I want to talk a little about tonight. It seems like it doesn't matter whether it's, on forums or Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc. You just see a lot of the same complaints all the time when there's a fight that is very wrestling heavy. Oh, wrestling is boring, lay and pray. That's like the longest running one. Wall install, or, my favorite is everybody prefers striking over grappling. I'll get into that in a little bit, probably. But, it just seems like there's a lot of complaining for something that is such an integral part of the sport and has the potential to be so exciting and interesting if you can get into it and, once you start to learn how it works and everything going on. So, I was having a really hard time putting together notes on this one, but I think I did enough. And, I want to go talk about this through two segments, really. The first segment is going to be talking about, the basic general fandom. And then the other half is going to be talking about, the talking heads, whether they're writers, YouTubers, bloggers, vloggers, what have you, and how they really honestly help to perpetuate these views. Because I'm someone, I wrestled in school. I wrestled from 7th grade through 12th grade, and then I did amateur boxing for a little bit. So for me, I can appreciate both forms, and I understand that a lot of people, they only come from one half, and they don't really necessarily appreciate the other half. Especially if you come from a striking background, you might not appreciate the grappling background as much because it's a lot harder to get into. Honestly, I mean, anybody can learn to throw a jab, but not everybody can learn to properly execute a double leg takedown. So it can be a little difficult to really get into and understand. So I'm going to try to help break this down. So let's start with the first half of this. The fandom, particularly on web forums and social media. Honestly, these places are the haven of the most casual MMA fans. And I don't mean casual as an insult like so many do. You're a casual fan, you only watch, UFC once a month, if that, once or twice a month. You maybe have a few fighters you recognize and you try to watch them. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with casual fans. But what I do have a problem with, and what gets on my nerves sometimes, is, when they just make the most completely ignorant statements about the ground game. They only want to see KOs, oh my gosh, takedown, piss break, pee break, Hopefully it doesn't count as swearing. But it's just complete ignorance of what's happening on the ground, and sometimes it seems like nobody really does a good job of explaining a lot of it or trying to get people interested in what's going on the ground game. And that includes, the more hardcore fan base as well on those forums and social media and whatnot. I have a couple solutions for, the casual fans. For one of them, it's try to watch wrestling and grappling events. The more you get into the sport, the more you should really want to understand what's going on. If you watch wrestling events, if you watch grappling events, whether it's, on Fight Pass, has a lot of submission grappling, or you can go to Flow Grappling, FLO Grappling, or Flow Wrestling, there's a lot of events on there and they'll teach you more about it. You'll learn as you go, and that'll make it more interesting. Or, even bigger, I think people that practice grappling arts should try to encourage MMA fans to actually give it a try, whether that's BJJ, whether that's no-gi grappling, or especially wrestling. I realize there's not a whole lot of wrestling clubs around. There's a lot more submission grappling, stuff like that. But if you are a wrestler and people that can't get into it, at least try to encourage them. And I know trust me, I know it's not always easy. but you got to do what you can to try to encourage, the more casual fans to get into it more. Because trust me, the more that you get them into it, the more they understand better, the better fans they'll be, the more educated they'll be. It creates a better viewing experience for everybody. Okay, look, I've watched a lot of UFC pay-per-views in Buffalo Wild Wings because I didn't want to have to pay for the entire pay-per-view myself and pay for my food that night. I'd rather just pay for some food and some drinks, sit back and watch. But man, sometimes the environment, just hearing the comments made, can be bad. So the more you work to educate people, the better off they'll be. Now, the second part I want to talk about is, the talking heads. I'm talking about, like I said, writers, bloggers, vloggers, YouTubers. Just so many of them seem to just bag on wrestling and grappling all the time. I think everybody wants to watch more striking and grappling, or I think everybody knows that people prefer strikes and KOs to wrestling and submissions, blah, 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 blah. And I don't understand it. These people are doing a disservice to their followers, their subscribers, their fans, the general fan base, whatever. These people are seriously doing a disservice to the sport. Now, hey, if they want to subscribe, if they want to target a specific fan base, fine. But they're not necessarily just reaching that specific fan base that they want to reach. People are going to watch them from all over, at least a little bit. And they're doing these people a disservice. I mean, and I'll be honest, I see less of this from people who enter MMA from like Muay Thai or kickboxing. To me, it almost exclusively comes from people who move into MMA from boxing. I don't know what it is, but it just seems like people who come from boxing, they have a somewhat general understanding of what's going on the feet, but then you can tell, especially if they review fights, whether it's on videos or blog entries, whatever, they never actually talk about what's going on the ground because they don't understand it. And like I said, this goes back to them doing a disservice to, the people who follow them. I mean, I just don't understand it. Why actually go out of your way to talk about MMA and build a fan base about MMA if all you're going to do is complain about such an important part of it? It just boggles my mind. Like, I'm not a striking expert, but I'm not a grappling expert either. I know a little bit about both. I know, just enough to explain kind of what's going on in fights or what, a fighter needs to work on. But at least I know a little bit about both aspects. You've got other people that'll talk about one specific aspect, completely ignore everything else that's going on in that fight. It's like, well, what if a fight's mostly grappling heavy? They either ignore it completely or they only talk about, the little bit of the striking that's going on in it. And like I said, they're just doing a disservice overall to the people that, subscribe to them, read their stuff, watch their videos, whatever. I mean, to me, this is what really gets to me. Why are you always complaining about the wrestlers and the grapplers? If anything, you should be complaining about your beloved strikers who A, can't defend a takedown, or B, can't get up once they get taken down. Don't complain about the wrestlers taking advantage of obvious discrepancies in their opponents. Complain about the fighters who aren't rounding out their grappling game, okay? It's a lot easier for a grappler to work on their striking than it is for a striker to work on their grappling and improve that aspect. But really, you should be complaining about the strikers who aren't doing that. Okay? Less complaining about the wrestlers and the grapplers. Maybe you should complain more about your beloved strikers. Okay? So I have, two solutions for these types as well. The first solution is one, go back to boxing, or go cover Muay Thai, go cover kickboxing, or you know what? Go cover Letway. Letway is trying to grow, and they could use some more coverage, okay? You know what's great about all three of those I just mentioned, or four of those I just mentioned, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, and Letway? There's no grappling involved, so you don't have to complain about it. Go cover that. Or Option number 2, and this is better. Again, same as the casual fans. Join a wrestling club. Take BJJ classes. Take submission wrestling classes. Go learn catch wrestling. Whatever. Learn the ground game. And then as you learn, you can educate your fan base along with you. As you learn, they can learn with you. I don't see why it's that hard. It's a lot better than complaining, because at least this way, you're actually doing something other than complaining and being negative. You're adding to the MMA zeitgeist by learning the different aspects, teaching your fans about the different aspects, educating them, and, you know, becoming a better overall fan and follower yourself. So, yeah, that's, to me, that's the better solution. I mean, if not, if you don't want to do that, then follow option 1. It's really not that big of a loss overall, honestly. So in closing, look, listen, wrestling and grappling aren't going anywhere. Either embrace the grind, or, you know, it'll grind you out eventually, because eventually I think, you know, you'll get sick of it if you're a fan, or if you're a talking head, then I think eventually fans are going to realize, well, this person doesn't always, you know what they're talking about, or they only talk about one aspect, so they're going to go elsewhere to get better education or information on the aspect that you're just ignoring or complaining about. So like I said, embrace the grind, or it'll grind you out. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this subject. You know, I know it's a bit of a heady subject. I know it's a sensitive subject because, you know, like I said, anybody can learn to throw a jab, or anybody can kind of understand what's going on in the striking game, and it takes a lot more to understand what's going on with the wrestling and the grappling. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now, if you like the video, please give it a like, and while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to WMMA Scene Now, and share the video as well. That's how the channel grows. Like I said, WMMA Scene Now, the most complete women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.